What's up guys, Dan here. Thanks so much for joining in for today's video. So for today's video, we're going to be checking out one of two new seats by Next Level Racing. The one that I have here in front of me, I've been using for a couple weeks now. This is the ERS4, but it also has a sibling that was released at the same time, the ERS5. Now, both of these seats are very similar as far as build quality and stuff like that, but they're aimed at two different users, which is why they released two sim racing seats at the same time, because it's going to be dependent on what your needs are on which one of these you're going to end up going with. But what I will say right off the bat here is that Next Level Racing has raised the bar incredibly high with these new seats. Now, I'm in a position, fortunately, where I have tested many different sim rigs over the last 8-9 years, something like that. Many times those sim rigs were sent to me for free by manufacturers for the purpose of testing. And every time I got a rig sent to me, the manufacturer sent me a seat along with that rig. So I have been in the position where I have tested many, and pretty much every manufacturer's branded sim racing seat that's been on the market. So I know the good ones and I know the bad ones. Some of them are really terrible and some of them are okay. Across the board, none of them have been that great. Typically, what I've always recommended is that you save the money on the sim branded seat, get the rig, and get a better quality seat elsewhere that's not specific from a sim racing manufacturer, because they typically are around $250 to $300. And I've kind of thought that they were never really worth that much money in general. That has all changed with the ERS4 and the ERS5. These are legitimately good and high quality seats. And I'm going to talk more specifically about this ERS4 in detail in this video. But before we do that, I want to let you know how I came about getting this seat. I'm going to put timestamps in the video description. If you do not want to hear this part, feel free to hit the timestamps to continue on to the next portion of the video. But I want to be very transparent with you, and I want to let you know, as always, how I got this seat. So a few months ago, Next Level Racing reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to review their rig that you see here, which is the Elite 160 rig. This is their top of the line rig. Now, up until that point, I've actually reviewed a lot of things for them before, but they had never sent me anything. Most of the things that I had reviewed for Next Level Racing up until that point, everything up until that point, I had paid for, purchased myself, used it, reviewed it, said whether or not I liked it. This is the first time Next Level Racing actually reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to review something on behalf of them for free. So I went and checked out the Elite 160, saw what it was, and said, absolutely, I would love to test it out and compare it to some others that I've used in the past, send it on. So they sent me the Elite 160, and initially when they sent me the rig, they sent me it with the ES1 seat. I'm going to put a picture of that seat up on the screen here. And also, if you saw my Elite 160 review, that is the seat that was on the rig during that review. That is a completely static, fixed back seat. That's as race as you can get when it comes to sim racing seats. It is the seat, I believe, that Boosted Media has on their crazy triple screen setup. It is a very popular seat, and a lot of people really like it. Now, I used it for a little bit, and it actually ended up being very uncomfortable for me. Now, seating comfort is very subjective, so just because it wasn't comfortable for me doesn't mean it's not going to be comfortable for other people. And in fact, if you go online, it's about a 50% of whether or not people like that ES1 seat or if they don't. So what I ended up doing is I was going to go ahead with the review, but I emailed my contact at Next Level Racing, and I just told them that, hey, I'm going to go ahead with the review. I'm going to do the review, but the ES1 seat is not that comfortable for me, so I'm going to leave it out of the review, just review the rig, and then come back and revisit the ES1 seat at a later date. So that's what I did. I started producing the review that I eventually put online that a lot of you have probably already seen. So after I finished that review, I hopped online, hopped on Amazon, and I went and bought, at the time, the latest reclinable seat that Next Level Racing had to offer. I just hopped on Amazon, I went and found it. It's the ERS3, also a very good seat. I went ahead, put it in my cart, placed the order, and had it shipped. And it was going to take a couple days to get here. So maybe a day, maybe 2 days, roughly. So it was after I placed the order, but before it was shipped. My contact at Next Level Racing reached out to me and said, totally understand, no problem at all. And hey, by the way, we've actually got these new seats coming out. At the time, I had no idea these even existed. She ended up saying that if you would like to test one of those, I'd be glad to send you one. And I said, well, what do I do here? Because I've already ordered the other one. And I said, you know what? It will be a good comparison anyways. So I told her, I said, yeah, go ahead. That's fine. Put me on the list. Send me a seat. I'll be glad to check it out. But I went ahead and kept the order for the ESR3 as well. ERS3. I don't know if I said that right. Anyway, so it was shipped to me about a week later. And then I ended up unboxing that, installing on the rig and using it and liking it a lot too. There was some positives and negatives to that seat. There were some things that I really did like, but there were a couple things I didn't really like that much. So it was kind of a mixed review from me. I didn't do a review on it, but anyways, I used it for a little bit, got used to it. And then eventually this one was shipped to me. And that was 3 seats in the matter of 2 months that I've got from Next Level Racing. So I started with the ES1, then used the ERS3, and then installed the ERS4, which is this seat, and this is the one I've been using for a couple of weeks now. So that's how I ended up with all 3 of these seats. You may have seen the ERS3 in a couple of my previous gameplay videos because I was sitting on that when I did those videos. Anyways, that's how we ended up with all the seats. The rig was sent to me for free. The ES1 fixed back seat was sent to me for free. I purchased the ERS3, which I still have, and then this one was sent to me for free for the purpose of review after all that. That's how we end up where we are today. So now we're going to get into the specifics of the ERS4 seat. So if you skipped the initial intro, here's where you're going to pick up with the rest of us. So what I can say is that both the ERS4 and the ERS5 are offered in 2 different materials. Okay, so they've got what I think looks a little bit better, a PU leather and suede edition, or you can get what you see here, which is and I'm reading it just to make sure I say it right. They call it their fabric and Simaero, SIMAERO mesh edition. That's what you see here. Now my ERS3 is actually the PU leather and suede edition. So it actually looks pretty cool, but it's not as breathable. So I knew that seat was making me a little sweaty on the rear and when I'd sit there for more than like an hour, especially in intense racing scenarios. So I knew when I had them send me this one, I asked specifically for this fabric one. And what I can tell you is that was a phenomenal decision. This thing breathes so well. This fabric is really, really good. And it still doesn't look cheap. It looks very, very high quality. There still is this kind of faux leather portion that kind of goes around the edge of it that gives it a really high quality look. And then you've got the fabric and the mesh where you're actually going to make contact with the seat. So all the touch points are going to be very, very breathable. And then the whole seat is accented with this white stitching. And let me tell you something. As I said earlier in the video, I've had a lot of seats from sim manufacturers that were not very good quality. In fact, I don't believe most of them are going to be priced around $250 to $300 to some even like $399. Out of all the ones I've used, I don't think any of them were worth that much money because the stitching was always off a little bit. The like the logos and the emblems and stuff like that were always a little bit crooked and you could just tell there was like a little less quality control on the sim manufacturer seats than say like my real world cars that have had like nice Recaro seats, or maybe not even Recaro seats, but just very quality Ford racing seats or whatever, or some aftermarket seats that I have put in cars in the past. In the real world, the sim manufacturer seats never really were up to par with those. This is. And based on what I've read and the videos I've seen on the ERS5, which I've not had in hand myself, but the experience has been very similar to those videos, to what I've seen in my own personal experience with this ERS4. So what I can say pretty confidently at this point is that this ERS4 and the ERS5, in theory, because I haven't had it in my hand, but I'm going by the assumption that they're very similar. These are going to be the best two options, period, available on the market right now when you're talking about seats made by a sim racing manufacturer. Next Level Racing, GT Omega, SimLab, things like that. The seats that are specifically made for sim rigs, these are the best. These are the most well put together. This thing legitimately looks like something that would be in a performance car. It has, I mean, you can see it in the video. It has a very Recaro-esque look to it. And if you know anything about performance cars, Recaro seats are like the best of the best. And these are very, 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 don't tell anybody, almost like copies of some of the Recaros I've had in my cars in the past. These are really, really good. Very high quality. Now, really quick, I'm going to touch on the price of these. So this ERS4 that you see here is going to come in at $299 US. So let's just say $300. And the ERS5 is going to come in at $249. So what's the difference between the 4 and the 5? So I've read all the documentation by Next Level Racing and watched a lot of videos, and some videos from people who actually got both. And the best I can tell is that the 4 is a more relaxed, less tight fit, more comfort oriented, whereas the 5 wraps around you more, holds you tighter, probably better if you have a rig with motion, and stuff like that. So it's really a comfort thing. This one's more designed for long-term comfort while still looking very sporty and being comfortable. Whereas the 5 is more, legitimately race inspired, tighter fitting, more, just generally just more sporty and tight, holds you in better. Now, I haven't used that one specifically myself, keep that in mind, but this one is very, very comfortable. So let's touch on some comfort stuff. So one of the things I noticed immediately that was much better about this seat than the ERS3 is the comfort on the bottom. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they've done here, but I believe it's going to be a little more thick, and it seems a little more firm. And what I found that after about an hour of driving in the ERS3, my butt started to get a little bit sore, and I started to feel like I needed to move around because I was just getting a little bit sore. It was okay, but for longer stints, it was getting uncomfortable. I have not ran into this at all with this seat. As a matter of fact, just the other day, I let time pass. I didn't even realize how much time was passing, but I was racing around with some people I don't even know on Forza Horizon. Before I knew, 4 hours had passed. And I had been just driving around randomly with some people that I think were taking pictures in different locations. And before I knew it, 4 hours had passed, and I was still just as comfortable butt-wise sitting here as I was when I first sat down. I can tell you 100%, I could not have done that with the ERS3. So if you're someone who has the ERS3 and you're kind of wondering if you should upgrade to the 4 or the 5, I can tell you for sure the bottom of the ERS4 is much more comfortable for a longer stints, at least for me. Now, I'm somebody that doesn't have a lot of cushion on my bottom. So because of that, the cushion on the seat and the way the seat bottom is built and how comfortable it is very important to me because I don't have a lot of natural cushion, if you know what I mean. So this is definitely proved to be much more comfortable on the bottom long-term than the ERS3. Now the back. I like them both. I think they're equally as comfortable, but I will say this is a tighter fit. So you definitely notice that the sides are really wrapping around you, even in this 4, and it's probably even more so with the 5. But in the 4 compared to the 3 feels more like a flat back. There's not really a lot of bolstering and stuff like there is, but it's not to this extreme. So this one definitely is going to hold you in the middle a little bit better, but you definitely notice, at least I do, I notice that those bolsters are there. Whereas it's almost like you're sitting on, excuse me, a plank with the ERS3. Not that one is better or worse, they're just different. So keep that in mind when you're choosing the seat that you want. One thing I will 100% say that's better about this seat is the lumbar support. There's no adjustable lumbar here, but it is very firm. And if you can see, this is kind of soft up top here, and this is very firm. It gives you a lot of lower back support. And I think that's part of why I was able to drive so long in Forza Horizon the other day, because it's just generally a very, very comfortable seat. This is a fantastic seat. I definitely think it's worth the $300 mark. Again, I know I said this earlier, but this is the closest you're going to get to a real world seat. Okay, this is very, very nice. This is comparable to some seats that you see in real cars right off the showroom floor. The other thing that I'm going to touch on, which actually is, it's a component of the ERS3, 4, and 5. So it's not something that's new to this specific seat, but if you don't have anything, this is something you'll want to know for all of their most recent seats. Again, the 3, 4, and the 5. They have dual ratcheting back adjustments. So you actually have to pull both of these hinges on both sides at the same time to get this seat to move. Now, at first I thought that was a little bit unusual because there's never been a time before in my life that, before I got the ERS3 seat anyways, that I've had to pull a latch on both sides of me to get a seat back to move forward and back. Never been the case. But so while it was a little bit weird at first, I actually ended up getting used to it and 100% can see the reason why they did it. This thing is incredibly stiff. I mean, there's a little bit of movement, and I think that's just in the flex and the seat back itself, but there's no movement in the hinge mechanism itself. Typically, that is not the case. I know I keep going back to this, but with sim manufacturing seats, that is not the case. They typically have a latch on one side, and there is some significant movement, maybe not on both sides of the seat, but the side without a latch has a ton of movement. And you feel that when you're stepping on the brake, especially when you have a load cell brake or something like that. This is going to be a lot more sturdy. Now, no seat. You can go out and sit in the seat in your car. If you press on the back really hard, it's going to move. There is no seat that's not a fixed back seat that the back isn't going to move some. So if you see a little bit of movement in a seat like this, that is perfectly normal, but this minimizes the absolute best that it possibly can. And 100%, the 3, 4, and the 5 are going to be the most stiff seats on the sim racing market because they have that dual latch. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on is the fact that all of Next Level Racing seats, at least this style seat, the seats with the reclining back, they come with seat slider. So whether you get the 3, the 4, or the 5, it's going to come with a built-in slider. You can see that down here, and that works just like the slider in your car to give you a lot of movement back and forth for adjustment if you let other people drive your rig and you need to slide the seat to get in and out or anything like that. It comes with a seat slider, and it's already assembled to the bottom of the seat. In fact, all of their seats come in 2 parts. They come in a very large, well-packaged box. The seat bottom is by itself and the seat top is by itself, and it just takes a couple of bolts to get it all bolted together. I will say, if you're going to mount it on a rig like this, it's not the easiest thing in the world. My suggestion is to don't put the seat back on the seat bottom until after you've got the seat mounted to the rig. It's just a little more awkward when you've got the seat back connected to the seat bottom when you're trying to get under there and kind of bolt everything with the rails and stuff like that. So it's just a suggestion to kind of just mount the seat bottom by itself without the seat back onto the rig, get it all adjusted, and then it's very easy to go grab the seat back, slide it into its little brackets, put the bolts in, and finalize everything and get it ready. But yeah, so guys, this is a phenomenal seat. Again, this is the best sim racing manufactured seat that I've ever used, and it really rivals some real world seats. All the stitching is perfect. All the logos are not crooked. They are perfect. Very, very nice. This particular material, very breathable. I can't really say any more good things about it. It is a fantastic seat. And it's the first time that I can remember back since I started making sim racing videos that I can honestly say that a sim racing seat is worth the price. So for the first time ever, I'm going to recommend that if you get a Next Level Racing rig, you don't have to skip the seat. I typically recommend skipping the seat and then going and finding it elsewhere. But for the first time, you can actually go ahead and pick out a seat, because definitely this ERS4 is phenomenal. And based on what I've seen, the ERS5 is just as phenomenal as far as quality, build quality, comfort, things like that. It's just going to depend on whether you want the more relaxed fit of the 4 or the more sport, tighter oriented fit of the 5. So I know I jumped around a lot in this video, but hopefully I gave you all the information you needed to decide whether or not you want to pick one of these up. Highly recommend them. Super, 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 super nice. And the 3 is nice too. You know, the ERS3 is good. I paid for that with my own money. But I'd say the big ticket difference between the 4 and the 3 is that the seat bottom is much more comfortable on the 4. They've done something different with the firmness or the thickness of the padding in there. Something, I'm not going to take it apart to see, but something in there is different that gives you a lot more longevity as far as, or at least for me, sitting in here for longer periods of time. But this is it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Fantastic seat. I'm sure the 5 is a fantastic seat. I'm not really sure why the 5 is cheaper, but if it is, as people say, just as comfortable as the seat and built as well as this seat, I'd almost say if you're okay with the tighter fit of the racing style seat, go with that to save some money, because it's definitely worth $250. And I think this is worth definitely $300. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. Hopefully this was helpful. Thanks so much for watching this video. And as always, guys, I will talk to you in the next video. We'll see you later.